John Hickenlooper's ethical lapses will cost him less than $3,000 and will cost you more than $100,000. Police accountability passes an emotional milestone, while the governor passes the blame for coming evictions. Are the zoo animals going to be freaked out by all the visitors coming back? That's your next question. And your good news this Friday is a couple celebrating 70 years, and they have one wish: to celebrate it together. That's next. The floodgate of evictions can open in Colorado tomorrow, and nothing suggests the Democratic Governor Jared Polis is going to extend his moratorium on evictions. When we asked, the governor's office pointed fingers at the state legislature for a fix. Democrats could not rally the votes last night to prevent landlords from evicting people who have missed payments during the pandemic.
I ask you to just take a look at me. Those of you who are still here in the chamber. Take a look at me and tell me that if something as egregious as what happens to black men in this country, and not just George Floyd, had happened to me, would you be making a decision on this bill because you were afraid of an election?
Democratic Representative James Coleman of Denver making a plea to his colleagues today to ignore politics and to join him in reforming police in Colorado. House passed that police accountability bill 52-13 today. Bill already got through the state Senate. It ends qualified immunity, which keeps officers from getting sued for excessive force. It would ban chokeholds and force every officer in Colorado to have and to turn on a body camera. Democratic Speaker of the House Casey Becker of Boulder emotionally announced today's final vote total.
With 52 aye votes, 13 no votes and no excuse, Senate Bill Senate Bill 217 is passed.
The Senate and the House now have to iron out some differences in their bills. There's no indication that Governor Polis wouldn't sign whatever they come up with on the issue of police reform. Coloradans are going to decide in November if lower property taxes are worth what would be a devastating hit to the bottom line of local schools, fire departments, libraries, and such. The House today voted to put a repeal of the Gallagher Amendment on the November ballot. The Gallagher Amendment requires that homeowners in our state shoulder 45% of the total property tax bill and that businesses pay 55%. What's happening is, because commercial and industrial property values are going to go way down because of the pandemic, the residential assessment rate would need to drop by about 18% to hold on to that ratio. That means far less funding for things in our communities. School districts would lose out on $490 million. County governments would lose out on more than $200 million in the year 2022. I think tea is the universal drink of pettiness, unless you are Republicans in the state legislature who served up coffee with a side of petty political statement today. House Republicans brought in coffee for the chamber from C&C Cafe. You remember that place in Castle Rock that opened in defiance of public health orders? No mask, no distancing, just kind of packed in. Well, C&C got shut down by the state, but raked in a ton of money from conservatives who filled a GoFundMe to overflowing. Support of freedom. That cafe reopens on Sunday. House Republicans happy to make a statement in support today. COVID-19 hospitalizations in Colorado are staying relatively low. We've told you for days now this encouraging news. 167 people as of now. That's an average of 2 coronavirus patients per hospital in Colorado. The spread has slowed significantly. So our Chris Vanderveen's the guy who watches the numbers, and he also makes these really high-tech charts with what appears to be Microsoft Paint from 2004. But you get the idea of where Colorado is compared to other states. So R0 is the measure of contagiousness of the virus. An R0 of 1 means that every person with coronavirus gives it to one other person. You keep it below 1, like where Colorado is on that chart, and the virus kind of dies out. Now you simmer above that line of 1, like Arizona's doing now, and your case counts spike. A next viewer named Scott reached out to us earlier this month, concerned about his daughter. Scott said that his daughter has asthma and cannot tolerate wearing a mask, being able to breathe. Now, schools plan to mandate masks for students and teachers come fall. That includes Denver Public Schools, where Scott's daughter goes. Our Anusha Roy looked into what this means for kids who have breathing issues.
Denver Public Schools says they've talked to Children's Hospital and in a statement said wearing masks should not impact students with asthma. It came up because the guidelines as they stand today indicate students and staff would be wearing masks in class. There's also a survey that closes today where parents can weigh in on 3 options that would blend remote and in-person learning. Now, the district acknowledges students' needs are different, and that's why they're encouraging families to talk to their doctors and schools about any accommodations they may need.
Breathing through a mask shouldn't be so difficult as to actually induce an asthma attack.
Dr. Monica Reddy, an asthma and allergy doctor, is encouraging parents and kids to practice wearing masks ahead of time.
Theoretically, if they felt like claustrophobic from the mask, perhaps, but no, it shouldn't be making their asthma worse per se, and I would still encourage them to go to the nurse.
The part about asthma is just one piece of the guideline for what classrooms could look like.
Everyone is maintaining a distance of at least 6 feet from one another.
DPS is also looking for ways to get students outside while following health guidelines, and the parent we heard from wants to know if there are medical exemptions. Online, DPS posted,
That will include creating specific policies for staff and students who are at higher medical risk, either because of their own health or because they live with someone who is at a higher medical risk.
Via email, the district said over the summer it intends to elaborate plans on a fully remote option for families. The district also said the guidelines are based on what they know right now, which means conditions could change before the next school year starts. For Next, I'm Anusha Roy.
Unless John Hickenlooper's Senate campaign is derailed by his ethics violations, they're going to end up costing you a lot more than they cost him. The former governor, now Democratic Senate candidate, who snubbed the Ethics Commission, got subpoenaed, then held in contempt, is going to get fined a grand total of $2,750. It is a fraction of what taxpayers paid to defend his violations of the state's gift ban while in office. Here's politics guy Marshall Zellinger.
John Hickenlooper was just slapped on the wrist. Not literally. The Colorado Independent Ethics Commission just fined the Democratic candidate for U.S. Senate $2,750 for violating Amendment 41 on 2 trips he took while governor. Part of the fine was for taking a ride on the private jet of home builder Larry Mizell, the founder of MDC Holdings. The trip was to the commissioning of the USS Colorado in Connecticut. The other fine was for his trip to a conference in Italy and not paying for some expenses like a ride to the airport in a Maserati limousine.
This amendment has never provided the commission with the ability to assess robust financial penalties.
The fine of $2,750 represents the estimated amount of gifts he didn't pay for multiplied by 2, though the commissioners were upset that the Public Trust Institute, the conservative group that made the complaint in the first place, upset the group didn't provide a proper estimate of the true amount.
I'm disappointed not only in the complainant, but also in our own investigation. We should have dug deeper on some of these things to assess their value.
The fine is just part of the cost. Remember the state fund that has been paying for Hickenlooper's attorney, Mark Gruskin? Your taxpayer dollars? When we add in the new charges posted last week, you paid more than $127,000 in attorney fees. For comparison, Hickenlooper's fine, which his campaign tells me he'll personally pay, is 2% of what you paid to defend him.
One of the issues we've had in the commission for a long time is we worry about being used by complainants and respondents alike for political purposes. There's a reason that we're called the Independent Ethics Commission, and that's because we're supposed to exercise independent judgment.
There was also supposed to be a conversation about any kind of punishment or penalty for Hickenlooper being in contempt of that subpoena. Well, first, his attorney argued that that should be thrown out since he testified the next day. The commission agreed unanimously, no, we're going to consider sanctions for that. And then they all decided no sanctions for being not showing up despite the subpoena.
Is he going to pay taxpayers back, Marshall, for any of the $127,000? Is there a past precedent for people who got taxpayer-funded defenses paying him back?
I asked the campaign that question. I haven't heard back yet. A tweet from Mary Ann Goodland, who knows so much about the Ethics Commission, says Scott Gessler didn't have to pay it back when I think he racked up almost $500,000 is what I think her tweet said.
Yeah, she works for Colorado Politics that we're partnered with, and she knows everything about that commission. So this is kind of offhand, Marshall, but remember that old news clip of the dead whale that washes up on the beach and everybody gathers around because they don't know what to do with the dead whale, and what they decide they should do is blow it up, and all they do is throw bits of dead whale everywhere on everybody? That essentially, to me, is how the Hickenlooper campaign has dealt with this. Yes, there was an issue. There was a dead whale, but what they've chosen to do is blow it up all over town. Thoughts?
If they didn't realize that, then by saying, hey, let's get rid of that subpoena thing at the start of today, that just made it even worse.
Yeah. Dead whale bits everywhere. All right. Thank you, Marshall. May I make a recommendation? And this is a personal one today. There are 202 days remaining in 2020, and we need to pace ourselves and give ourselves a little grace. This year's been trying for different people in different ways. I can't imagine that anybody has been immune to the strain of 2020. You do not know the weight of what you have been carrying around with you until you set it down. Example. A little while ago, my boss suggested that I take a half day off. I sat down and cracked a book that I'd been reading and realized that the last time that I had opened that book, or any book, was more than 3 months earlier in February. Not proud that I went more than 3 months without taking a day off or opening a book, but to be honest, every spare minute outside of work and raising my toddler, I was spending trying to learn more about what was going on in the world so that I could try to share it with you. So it turns out that wasn't really a healthy approach. So I say it again, you don't know what you're carrying until you set it down. That book, by the way, that I picked up was wonderful. Well-known story set in Colorado. I bet you a ton of you have read it. Plain Song by Kent Huruf. If you haven't read it, highly recommend. But my real recommendation this Friday is that this weekend or sometime soon, you give yourself a little grace, a chance to unplug. It's not letting down your family or your coworkers or your viewers. Quite the opposite, actually. Might be the only way that we get through the remaining 202 days of 2020.
I feel lonely. I really have missed having him there.
7 decades together, one pandemic apart. It's an anniversary gift you should stick around to see. And an artist hopes maybe we'll get the message if he writes it so big that everyone can see. Next. CDOT's new C470 express lanes are opening this weekend, right at the tail end of spring, just as CDOT promised. Okay, they said it was going to be the spring of 2019, but I don't want to be too critical of them. The express lanes run between I-25 and Wadsworth. They'll be fully open Sunday. Drivers will be able to drive them for free until mid-August, and then they get you. The tolls will kick in at that point, between 65 cents and $3.60, depending on how long you're living life in the fast lane. Our next question is about the Denver Zoo reopening this week. Do the animals need to be prepped for the return of human visitors? I mean, are they at risk of any sort of shock or overexcitement to see all the people back at the zoo? Nah, they're good. They're fine. Zoo says they're used to people. In fact, the Denver Zoo told us that the real shock to the animals was that day when the people all just disappeared at once. The closure of the Denver Zoo was the longest in the zoo's 124-year history. The zoo says that prior closures were typically just a day or two because of nasty weather. There is a bold new message on the streets of Denver, one that will not come and go with the protests. It is written right down Broadway. Tonight, we hear from the local artist who designed that mural, Adri Norris.
The text of the mural is Black Lives Matter, remember this time. We are here on a major thoroughfare that has been shut down in order for this mural to happen. In order to read this, you have to look straight at the Capitol building that makes our laws. My name is Adri Norris. I am the designer of the mural as it stands right now. This is not the first time we're doing this protest. We are in a moment, and I really want people to remember this moment and keep this thing going, because there is so much change that needs to happen in order for all of us to have the freedom and equality that was promised us in the Constitution. Talk about this to your kids. Talk about this to your grandkids. Talk about this to your neighbors. This is not a black and brown problem. This is an American problem. And if we do not continue to tell this story, this will continue to be an American problem. It is absolutely essential that this is happening right here, right now.
Fridays, we reserve time for your good news. And I mean, someday we'll return to approaching people randomly on the sidewalk and in parks, but until then, we offer some more personal good news stories, like that of Jack and Virginia Schleicher, married 70 years yesterday. Jack lives in a nursing home these days, and because of the pandemic, he and his love have been separated for the last 3 months until their anniversary.
We are waiting for the woman of his dreams to come and visit so he can celebrate his 70th anniversary.
Oh, yeah, I'm very anxious.
He's waiting, anticipating her arrival because he hasn't seen her for 6 weeks.
Waiting for my wife to show up for the reunion dinner. We have this gourmet restaurant we go to. It's called Perkins.
Each resident here has a guardian angel. Our guardian angel, Lydia, she set this all up.
Can you take that?
All right, it's all right.
Nothing to do.
This is why we do this. This is why we work here. He needed this. This is why when he arrived, he said, my goal is to make it to my 70th anniversary, and he did it.
Greetings. It's been so long. My wife is a very beautiful lady. She is a very good Christian.
6 feet apart.
Thank you.
It's a very, I think, emotional thing for all of us. It's filling our cup, definitely.
Oh, it was a wonderful feeling. So good to see him again. I feel alone. I feel lonely. I really have missed having him there.
Happy anniversary!
Thank you.
Oh, when he stood up, that through the lens of our photojournalist, Tom Cole. We'll finish with your feedback next. Patrick writes in tonight with feedback on former Governor John Hickenlooper's continuing ethical troubles. It writes, totally unforced political error by someone who should have known better. Patrick writes, he could have worked this out 6 months ago. Regardless of the motives of the people who brought those complaints, Patrick says Hick only has himself to blame for letting this drag out so long. Yeah, Patrick, I am absolutely baffled by the approach of his team on this. Like I said, they had the problem with the dead whale on the beach and they decided to blow it up all over town. Jessica says, wow, never thought I'd be sitting on my couch crying after Kyle told me and all the viewers to take a freaking break, but here we are. Give yourself some grace this weekend. See you next time.